Welcome to a podcast by Kayleigh, the gateway to unlocking your unlimited potential. I'm creating an army of 6- and 7-figure makeup artists, and I want you to join me. In this podcast, I'm going to be crushing gatekeeping, opening the doors to the knowledge you need, and deep diving into the topics that can push us to the next level. Be prepared for epic guests and answers to the questions you have always wanted to know. No more small business. No more just a makeup artist. The beauty industry is a $250 billion industry, and you're in it. Let's get ready to open those gates. This is a podcast by Kayleigh. Please welcome the incredible Anita Mae Aguilar to a podcast by Kayleigh today. Now, Anita is the host of the Manifesting Money podcast. I actually discovered her from her days when she was the host of the Makeup Mentor podcast. Anita is a former makeup artist and she is now a manifestation coach. She works in production and she is a podcast host. I really wanted to get Anita on today because I haven't actually interviewed anyone yet who has left the makeup industry. And I think this is still really important to talk about because sometimes our journeys and our chapters do come to a close. Anita is not afraid to show up and disclose the good, the amazing, but also the bad, the not so amazing, and the ugly. And I think that is really important, that we break down those walls and admit that sometimes makeup is not for us anymore. Now, today's conversation is going to be a little bit different. You're not going to walk away with 1,000 business tips today. You're not going to walk away with actionable tasks, but you are going to hear a really interesting story and interview all about Anita's career from makeup artist to podcast host to manifestation coach. Today's interview is more of an autobiographical, if that is a word, look at Anita's life. There is so much to be learned from why people leave the industry, following your heart, following your intuition, even if that intuition is telling you something that you might not want to hear. So I want you to sit down with this one, get a cup of tea, get a nice cozy drink, and really sit down and listen to what's in between the lines in this episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. Please welcome the incredible Anita Mae Aguilar. Thank you so much for coming today, Anita. Would you mind introducing yourself to the lovely listeners, who you are, what you do, where you're from?
Yeah, so my name is Anita Aguilar. I am the host of the Manifesting Money podcast, which used to be the Makeup Mentor podcast, which is how you found me. I'm a money mindset coach, so I specifically teach people see it, believe it, receive it. You can do that with money too. And I am also a comedian.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either. I'm just honestly, every time I get a chance to introduce myself, I kind of throw something new in there. But that is something that I really want to start to pursue more when I get back to New York, is like being a comedian, funny skits, things of that matter. Every time, again, I introduce myself, I like to show different parts of myself because you're so much more than what you do for work or creatively. And I just think that's really important.
I could not agree more. And it's why you are the perfect guest today. So a little bit of backstory. I have followed Anita since 2020. I am a long-time first episode listener of Anita's podcast. And back then, as you just mentioned, you were the Makeup Mentor podcast. So I'd love to start there if that's okay with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your time as a makeup artist?
Yeah, honestly, that's where everything started. I got so many chills right now. I really started with me like wanting to have my own business full time. And at the time in Virginia Beach is where I was at with my twin sister. I was going to school for, I don't know, graphic design or something. I was just going to college because I joined the military so I could specifically pay for college. And here I am after training, all this stuff in college, and I'm just miserable. I'm working as I think I was a server at a time. And I was like, just crying. I just was in my car crying one day. And I told my dad, like, I don't know what I want to do. And my dad, he doesn't really know what to say in those moments, especially when we're crying. He has 5 girls. And he said, just, babe, do what you want to do. I said,
classic.
Okay. I just remember being so mopey and like so negative. And I was like, just want to do makeup. I don't want to do cosmetology. I don't want to do hair. And there was a school specifically for makeup that taught bridal. like a little bit of special effects, a little bit about business, like specifically about skincare. And I was like, oh, how cool. So finding that school was like a really manifestation in itself. And that's kind of when I made the decision. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be a makeup artist and I'm going to have my own business.
The reason that I wanted to get you on the podcast, I believe you have such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to manifestation, but I think that you have a journey that a lot of us, myself included, can really resonate with. And you've always put your heart out there on social media and you've really shared that journey. So obviously you don't do makeup anymore, right?
No, but I miss it. And it was so funny that you asked me to come on the podcast because I miss doing makeup so much.
Oh, okay. Can you talk us through, you went to school, you did makeup, you had your own business. What led to not doing makeup anymore?
COVID was a big part of it, but I think it was already kind of falling off like in itself. Like makeup was never like my big dream. And even now I still kind of feel like that, like manifestation coaching was never like my big dream. I'm grateful for it. Don't get me wrong, but like it was never like my end goal. My end goal has always been production, being movie star. Like it's always been this intuitive knowing. And makeup was a really cool way for me to get my like a little bit of experience with that. So I like got to be on set and, but even when I had my own business, I was kind of like, I was independent, but I was also like a contractor. So a lot of my jobs were coming from contract jobs. Some of my jobs were coming from my Instagram or Google, but it wasn't like solely on that. So even though I was doing makeup full time, I still felt like an imposter. Once I started to kind of, again, let that go, or like the idea that I was an imposter, and just really allow whatever to come to me without like suffocating it, is when, things started to flourish a little bit. I got more opportunities. Even if they weren't paid, I was like saying yes, yes, yes. Like the Oscars was like one of the big things.
I remember you totally manifested that.
Yeah. And the experience itself was not what I thought it was going to be at all. But I think it was just the whole process of like, I want to do this. And it was really hard for me to follow through, but I followed through, and just watching everything unfold is what really ignited this like fire of like manifestation. I was getting coffee with other makeup artists and I would just learn from them, and we would be in the coffee shop for literally hours. That's when I started to be like, okay, I kind of want to start recording this. And then again, I had this story about the Oscars, and I was like, okay, I want to record this. It just felt like my safe place to like hop on and like talk about this stuff, because even though I was in California now, things were a little bit more like you were able to talk about manifestation a little bit more freely. But it wasn't until I joined the Chris Harder mastermind that I got in a room with other entrepreneurs and people who had their own businesses. And I got up there and I talked about manifestation. In my mind, I was like, everybody knows about this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here, right? They wouldn't have their own business if they don't know about manifesting. Like that was literally my mind for like processing. So when I started talking about manifestation, like you just see this look in people's eyes where they're like, it's like their eyes get so big and wide and you can almost feel like their heart expanding. And I had that moment when I learned about it too. So I was like, oh, I think there's something here.
Oh my goodness. Would you mind telling us how you discovered manifestation? Because obviously that is a huge part of your podcast, your career, your journey, and part of your makeup career as well, was you manifested a lot of things in that. So would you mind telling us about that?
Yeah. I also want to point out, I was really good at manifesting. Obviously, those things, what you said. But I was also really good at manifesting like guys. Like I'd be like, oh, he's the dreamiest guy in the whole world. And like, things would happen where either they take me on a date or now they're obsessed with me. And I was just like, whoa, stuff like that would happen a lot. And I also love concerts. And you're in London, so I know like concerts are really big there too. But I'd get in backstage to like concerts and like just crazy stuff would happen. When I started learning about manifestation, it actually started from a book, You Are a Badass.
Yes, yes.
She's my favorite. But my sister introduced that book to me. So my sister is like a really big part of me learning all this. But I also commend myself for being open and receptive to it, because for so long I was so just like, especially when I started my business, I was like, nope. I just did not want any help. So me being open, I think also had a really big impact on that. But Jen, when she spoke, it resonated with me. Like anybody else could talk about it, but it just never made any sense. So when she started talking about the law of attraction, manifestation, I was like, okay, I hear what she's saying, but I don't get it. Like it still doesn't make sense, like how our thoughts become things. And this is before I knew what podcasts were. I was looking at videos on YouTube and then I found the Manifestation Babe. And she had a podcast. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wait, no way. We can just listen to the audio. That's great. Why don't I just do that? So she was the first podcast I ever listened to. And she really opened up my eyes of like what manifestation was, the subconscious mind. There was also a couple other YouTube videos with her name was Mary Kate, Magic Mary Kate or something. I really, really appreciate all of those people because their content is what helped me become more conscious. And so anytime that I'm creating content, and I don't feel like posting, or I was like, I don't know if I should share this, I'm kind of scared. I always think about those times in my life where I'm like, it resonated when she said it. So like, I believe that our voices have a certain frequency. And when I say it, it resonates with people because of the frequency that I put out.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny you say that, Anita, because my very first delve into manifestation was also Catherine Zenkina and her podcast.
Oh, cool.
Isn't that so cool? Don't you think it's like so amazingly insane that you now do that feeling that she gave you and that like resonation and that like magic tingly feeling that you get when you're like listening to somebody who's like lighting you up? You do that for people now, Anita. Don't you think that's crazy?
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful. And at times it's almost overwhelming. It's one thing when you hear, at least you get messages on Instagram and like, but when I meet people in person, I'm like, whoa, people would recognize me on the street and I just kind of forget. You kind of forget that like, you're like a walking subconscious reminder that anything is possible. And there's so many times where people, again, would message me, but in San Diego, it was happening where people were coming up to me and I was in the nail shop. Some girl came up. She said, "You're the manifestation girl." And I said, oh my gosh. And it's just like so exciting and overwhelming. And it makes me express my emotions because it's like so full circle that you get to be that. And there's so many times that I did manifest what I wanted, my apartment, money and people. But it was like when I got those things, I felt numb. There's times where I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel that excitement that I feel, the buzzing. And I would just get so upset. And then I realized, I was like, Anita, it's a story. It's a story that makes you feel those emotions. And that's why I love reliving the stories, telling the stories, meeting people and hearing their stories. It's just, it just gives me so much gratitude.
Yeah. I feel like your journey, it's certainly not been like an easy one. You've definitely, to rewind a tiny bit, like putting manifestation over here for a second, the makeup thing, you worked, like I was there with you, like listening to your podcast week on week, hearing everything about your business. And I guess to not give that up, but to close that chapter, it must have been really, really hard. How was that? How was that decision?
I think there is grieving to every chapter. And once I started learning about quantum leaps, like, again, I was getting the things that I wanted super fast, which was awesome. But it was also like getting too like wrapped up in the instant gratification, not seeing the beauty in the like, slowly, gradually building things, but also allowing things to come to me because I was just so like, I want this, I'm going to go get it. Which I do believe each and every one of us need that. And the more that you can become conscious of your cycles, it's like for me, I know that these months of like November, December is like give, like not taking, just give as much as I can. And then January, it's like you pick up on the momentum of everybody starting these new goals. And it's like you have to allow time to grieve though. And when it comes to grieving, it's like you're not only grieving experiences that you've had that you might not have again. So like, okay, I'm probably never going to be in this environment again. Maybe. Even if I do, it's probably not going to be the same. And then with that, you just have so much more gratitude because you're not fighting those feelings. You're really allowing yourself to say like, ooh, that hurt so bad. But I'm also so grateful.
It must have been so hard. And I feel like if anybody can talk to this, pivoting, changing up your career, it's you, because you've done it. And I think a lot of our community hold on to staying in the makeup industry way longer than they should or that they need to. So if somebody is listening right now and they're really resonating with kind of everything that we're saying, and they maybe feel like their time is up, or maybe they don't feel happy in the career anymore, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them, speaking from your own experiences?
I would say just give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to let go. Also give yourself permission to go after what you do want, because that's exactly what you did when you started. Like, you had to let go of something in order so that you could start makeup. Like, for me, it was bartending. I didn't want to let go of bartending because I loved the money. I loved the people. But when I knew it was time for me to move on, I stayed. And so every single day, again, I'd show up and I would try to have the same feeling of excitement and joy to be there, but it just wasn't there. And again, it was like that grieving process. It's about neutralizing it and really like seeing every single decision of like, okay, I can either go this way or I can go that way. This way isn't bad. This way isn't good. They're just two different roads. And when you can neutralize it and allow yourself to feel whatever it is that's coming up, it makes it so much easier to just like, pick the road that's most in alignment with you.
I love that advice. I love what you said. Hang on. There's a siren. Can you hear it?
I like the sirens. we should do so. Like, every time there's a siren, let's say that's our angels celebrating us.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I might keep it in now. I love that. Okay, I'm looking at sirens completely differently right now. Yeah, I loved what you said about neutralizing it and just kind of not taking out the emotion, but like, it's just two different decisions. And I feel like there's no right or wrong with it. Like, makeup is always there, right? And that's what's kind of keeping me less scared about that decision, is that I can go back to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, even now, I still go up to people and I'm like, ooh, what's your skin type? What kind of lashes do you wear? Like, it doesn't go away. It's still subconsciously programmed. And every time I do my makeup and I'm just sitting at my desk and I'm, do my eyebrows, it's like such a reminder that like, that was something I had absolutely no idea how to do. And now it's so second nature to me. So it's so cool to like have that skill set and know that you can build a skill set like that. So like, if you're ever in this place where you're like, oh, I don't want to let this go, you're not letting it go. It's still subconsciously programmed and it can just evolve in like different ways.
So let's pivot back to manifestation, because obviously that is what you do now. So tell us, the listeners and me, what do you do right now in the present day? We've talked about the past. We've talked about makeup. We've talked about how you got into manifestation. What does your business look like right now?
Right now, so I'm rebuilding everything. When I was in New York, it was really, really hard for me because, again, this desire to teach and coach full time, it started to die. And somebody said, I think it was maybe like a month or two after I got there, somebody said, you can't be the same version of you, who you were before you got to the city, after you get here. And I was like, what? Because in my brain, I'm like, okay, let me go back to doing everything that I was doing. But a lot of my desires started to die. And I started to like let them, instead of like forcing things to happen, I just slowly allowed them to die. It was like, again, a lot of grieving. I took a huge step back from self-development and I just started reading a lot of really good stories. Like just books. It felt so good to pick up a book and say like, this is what my thoughts were. It's like, whoa, I forget that people write just regular stories.
Yes. Yeah.
And New York is such a creative place, with music. And it's like, obviously with self-development, you want to surround yourself with people who are, at this place where they've had some success. But like, I also find so much beauty in surrounding myself with people who are still trying to figure it out. Like some of my best friends in New York City are people who are just now starting their music career. Also other coaches and mentors who still have office jobs and starting their business. And it's been a year year since I've seen those people, and I just got to see them this past weekend again. And it was like, oh, they've evolved so much.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So for some context for the listeners, because obviously I know kind of your trajectory and your New York story, but
I'll give you the full timeline. So the timeline, 2018 is when I went to school. 2019 is when I'm freelancing in Virginia, but not full time. 2019 and a little bit of 20 before the pandemic is when I was full-time makeup artist in San Diego. 2020, COVID hit. I started my podcast, and then I started coaching makeup artists. 2021, a TikTok video of mine blew up, and I made a 3-day manifesting money workshop. And that workshop went viral. And then that's what kickstarted me fully leaving like makeup mentor podcast and rebranding. That year I went from like $1,200 from the 3-day workshop to $10,000 in 1 month. And I started to build from there. I got a team, I got an office, but I was already planning to leave San Diego and go to New York because that was my big goal. So 2022, I left San Diego. I drove from San Diego all the way to New York. I got to New York in September. My roommate just so happened to be this photographer for Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. And he wanted to start coaching people. So we just really, really hit it off. And he was like, kind of like my mentor. So I lived with him for like the first 6 months. In January, I think it was January, I actually ended up coming back home to Nebraska. And I was here because I'm actually here in Nebraska right now. And it was not part of my plan at all. So it was really, really hard for me to like take a step back. But, once things started to align for me to come back home, it was also really hard because it was like intuitive knowing that something was going to happen to my dad. Not only me, but my sister also knew too. Like we're both very intuitive and connected. We were having a lot of dreams and just feelings. So I like grieved my dad. Nothing happened to him, but I just really needed to grieve this version of me, like trying to save him. He's alcoholic and abuses substances. And it's like always been on and off my life. And it was honestly nothing I really ever shared with the podcast either up until like I got to New York. And then when I decided to come back home, he had a heart attack. And it was crazy that I made the decision to come back home before that even happened. So I came back here. I just got super grounded. And it was like I was having this relationship with God where I was like, I want to go back to New York. I want to go back to New York. And God was like, nope. You need to sit still. You need to be here, be now, be present. So I've just been investing a lot of time with my family and my friends, and slowly, obviously I'm still investing time into my podcast, but not to the full extent of what I used to. And now it's like I had to come back here to learn a lesson. And it wasn't about my dad. It was about my mom. It's crazy. And then once I learned that lesson, God was like, okay, you can go back now. And I was like, no, I'm scared because I've been getting comfortable. Now my move back to New York is in January. And I've had a lot of people, I obviously have a lot of friends who are super intuitive psychics, and they just genuinely love sharing stuff with me. And they're like, Anita, you're going to be busy. That's why God has you there right now, because you're going to be busy. And I'm like, oh, goodness. So right now I'm rebuilding my team, rebuilding my website, rebranding, just whole new season of not only the podcast, but ready for celebrities, ready for being more into production and just whole new chapter. So that's the whole timeline.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but I have to tell you something. My signature program is back. Introducing the next season of my Statement 12-week course for makeup artists, the By Kayleigh Mentorship. Now, I've been running this course twice a year now for about 3 years, and it's honestly so special to me. We spend 12 weeks together where I teach you almost everything there is to know about the business side of makeup. From ideal client, money week, website week, 2 weeks of sales and marketing, portfolio week, every single Monday, join live or on catch up for our teaching calls. Every single Friday, book your slot to get mentorship and guidance by yours truly. It is the original mentorship for makeup artists, and I am so proud of this course. The things my students have achieved literally make me burst with pride. From 0 clients to fully booked wedding seasons, that is truly a win that I have seen several times on every season, by the way. From securing luxury clients to working with celebrities, from leaving their full-time jobs to going full-time in makeup. It was their hard work and their hunger that got them there. But I like to think I played a very teeny tiny part in this with this amazing course. Doors close soon, so don't wait to grab your slot. Epic change is coming, and it's inside the By Kayleigh mentorship. Now, back to the pod. That's the timeline. Oh my goodness. I feel like we're really filled in right now. Oh my gosh. One day I hope I can meet you in New York. New York is like my spirit home. Like I just feel, I can't describe it, Anita. I can't describe it, but I visited New York like a couple of years ago, and I actually didn't have a great time there. Like I didn't have like the most fantastic holiday of my life, but something in me, it's like a magnet. Like I have to go back there. It's so strange. Universe. I believe it's the universe. Something needs me there.
Chills. Ooh.
You know, so maybe I'll meet you one day in New York. Obviously, going to New York, starting kind of your life there in the production side, the podcast, starting to build your team there, and then making the decision to come back must have been really difficult. Can you talk on that at all?
Yeah, honestly, it was so hard. It was so hard. It was also me, like, when I got to New York, I was like, okay, I'm going to start working on love because I've been attracting a partner, you know, and I'm just like, I've been boy crazy my whole entire life. And I'm like, I'm ready for my man. I'm ready for a man. Because I have more of like an avoidant approach with relationships. And that includes my relationship with money. Like when things get difficult, I would withdraw. Same thing with like love. And I was like, okay, I want to start working on this. And what I realized is that it was actually opening up my relationship with God opposed to like an actual person. And I did go on some really good dates like in New York, and I journaled about them. I wrote every single detail of like what time he picked me up, what did he wear, what did we talk about, what were red flags, green flags. I realized that like, you know, I wanted a man to put me more in my feminine because I was so much in my masculine with my business. And so when I realized that, it was like, oh, God was like, he's not your masculine. I'm your masculine. I haven't been as vocal about talking about my relationship with God too, because it's not as cookie cutter as like everybody thinks it is. And I've always really struggled with this, even before I started talking about manifestation, because my family thinks that manifestation is devil work and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, it was really hard for me to talk about it because, you know, what if I don't get their love anymore? But it was also like, is God going to punish me? Like that whole year, even in New York, it was like really like healing my relationship with God. And so like when God told me to like let go, it was so hard. But then when I got back here, you know, it was like every single day I had to surrender. Every single day I was like, okay, just be here, be now. And crazy things would happen where it was like not signs that I was going back to New York, but signs that New York never left me. So there's like 1 or 2 coffee shops in this little town that I'm in. And I see these guys walking around and, you know, I'm Hispanic and like these guys are like tan. And I was like, there's no other tan people in this town. And I was like, you guys are not from here. Anyway, so they walk up to my table or like passing by and I'm just sitting there journaling. And I was like, where are you guys from? And guess what they said? New York. And I said, no way. And they're like, yeah, we have this little jazz band and we're here for our friend's wedding. And like, again, it wasn't a sign for me to go back to New York. It was a sign that New York is always with me.
Never left you. Yeah. That makes me get a little lump in my throat because it's so true. New York will always be with you. It's such a special place, isn't it, New York? Have you ever been to London?
No, and that's what I was going to say too. You think that, we'll meet up when you come to New York. I said, girl, I want to go to London.
I think you would love it here, Anita. I really think you'd love it here. Like London is like the same kind of grittiness as New York. Like it's not perfect. Sometimes people are a bit rude. People rush everywhere, but there's like a spark that it has that's really fun and interesting. Like anything can happen at any moment. And I feel like New York has that as well, you know?
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Oh, I cannot wait for January and to see you return to New York, though, physically. So we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present. Let's talk about the future. What is Anita up to in New York?
Oh, I'm so excited about this. Honestly, it's so scary and expansive. And I teach a lot about quantum leaping. And this is how I know I'm going through a quantum leap, because what the scary part is like, okay, do you want to just move? Or do you want to really step into everything that you wanted when you got there? And again, I'm just listening to what God is saying. Instead of closing my eyes and making something and visualizing something, I'm really just closing my eyes and receiving and seeing what God, universe, source has for me. I just listened, and it was your own apartment. And I was like, what? Because everybody sublets there, right? So again, my goal is to just really have a really solid foundation of what I want. It's Anita, let's say you blew up on TikTok or get on the news or whatever. It's what would not change in my current reality if that were to happen? Because that's always where my most abundant receiving mode is where I can get as close to what I want without needing to stretch beyond my means so much. So studio apartment, I'm going to get just a little studio, something that's just I need to be by myself so I can podcast, so I can make funny videos, so I don't have to kind of cringe when people can hear me in the other room, which I don't think it's bad, but it's so powerful when you're by yourself in solitude. And so that's really big. And celebrities, I'm literally so excited to start interviewing celebrities. I keep hearing being abundant as a new podcast series, interviewing celebrities. And I'm still having the manifesting money, but that one's more educational, more fun. This one is specifically about I want to know how you blew up, as a celebrity. What was that like? What was money like? What was men like? It's all these different things that happen. Another thing that I've also been consciously manifesting is being more in production, and I want to work. That's another thing too that took me a lot of giving myself permission of I want to work. I want to get there. I want to be around people. I want to have experience. And it's less about the money, but more about being submerged by a whole atmosphere of what it's lights, camera, action. Even if I have to sweep the floors, it's kind of this exciting, still be this version of myself that is hardworking, that's great teamwork, but also have my business, help people around the world, and set the example in that way too.
It sounds so exciting, Anita. It sounds, I cannot wait for that podcast. May I ask, who are we manifesting to be on it?
Oh, cool. Ashley Graham, for sure. I love Ashley Graham.
Badass.
She's from Nebraska and she lives in New York. So she's a big one. I'll just do a rapid fire of people I have in mind. Jack Harlow, for some reason. I really want to listen to his story. Penn Badgley.
Oh, so fun. That would be such a barrel of laughs.
He is so conscious and so aware. Meghan Trainor, Yvonne Orji, she has this book called Bamboozled by Jesus, and I love everything about her story. She's really fun too.
One thing that I've really got from just talking to you today is I want to honor kind of your bravery. I think it's not easy to have a public platform. And I think as an educator, there's a lot of pressure that I felt for me to stick things out. I want to honor you because you have always shown up on your stories and you've always been real and you've always been hey, makeup's not for me right now. I'm doing this. Hey, New York isn't for me right now. I'm going home. And that is not easy. That takes you taking your pride out and your ego out. And that takes a really good head on your shoulders, Anita, especially on social media where we only ever see people's A-roll and never their B-roll. We only see the front of store and not the back of the house. So I really want to applaud you and thank you because to watch you be so vulnerable and admit when things aren't necessarily sunshine and rainbows and daisies, it makes me braver. So I really want to applaud you. Thank you for sharing your journey. You got emotional earlier. Why did you get emotional earlier?
Well, first I want to say thank you for saying all of that. And I'm in a place where I can fully receive those things. And I'm not like, oh, it's not a big deal, because that's how I used to be. But now I'm like, oh. And I've personally learned to not hide that anymore. When I was little, it was always like, quit being a baby, stop being so emotional. Like, I had to learn how to express my emotions and not hold them back. And it's honestly one of my biggest fears about blowing up, not only on social media, but like when I get on the Drew Barrymore show, I'm so scared to start crying. But, you sharing this, that's what helps you connect with me more, is what gives me permission to go out and do it anyway. Because I just think to myself, well, I don't have to not cry. I also want to say thank you, because like whatever it is you see in me is within you. And I think that's also what helps me express this emotion, because it's like you wouldn't notice those things about me being brave and vulnerable if it wasn't in you. And even us just talking, it just helps pull off these layers and layers and layers we have of like this like core identity of who we are. And so it just gives me more permission to keep being that way, because I know it's helping someone.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know this, but you help me, because there is going to be a time where, I'm going to have to sit on social media and announce that I'm not going to be doing certain things anymore. And I'll be thinking, okay, channel Anita. I need some of Anita's energy, because I just love how unafraid you are of admitting when things aren't right, or when things are changing, or when things aren't going great. And that's really refreshing, because social media is sometimes that kind of place. And it's just good to know, one, I'm not alone, but also two, that it's okay to pivot. It's okay to try new things. It's okay to start a new business. It's okay to start a new podcast. And that's what I really want people to get out of this podcast with you today, is like, it is okay to change it up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Preach, preach. So I want to play a little game.
Okay, let's go.
I do a little game at the end of each episode. It's kind of like you do a little game at the beginning of your episodes, right? This game is called Smashing the Gate. And my whole mission with the By Kayleigh podcast and brand is to smash down the gates of gatekeeping, which stop women from achieving their fullest potential and earning the most money that they can. So these are anti-gatekeeping, quick fire, but you can elaborate if you want to, questions. Are you ready?
Okie dokie. Yep, ready.
Right. So I want to know, what is your top manifestation tip or like practice that you do?
Let's see. I would say getting clear on your numbers. So your most abundant, beautiful life is not much as you think it is. I think that's the biggest thing. I always ask myself, if I had $1 million today in this moment, what would I do? And that's always been my biggest tool, because then I was like, okay, well, how much would that be? My studio, groceries for the whole month. It's like, once you break down those numbers, it's happening.
Love that. I'm going to try that. Okay. Somebody who's listening to this podcast, although we didn't really talk too much about manifesting, where would you recommend they start? If they are intrigued, if they are, I'm aligned to whatever you guys are talking about, where do they start?
Find somebody who it resonates when they say it, right? Just like we talked about, Catherine and Mary Kate was for me. It's like, find that person that's like, oh, when they say it, it makes sense. And then stick with that person. And you're going to find more people from that avenue and start to attract people. But that's the first thing that I would do. Find someone, when they say it, it makes sense and stick with them. So I have the Manifesting Money Academy. So it's an 8-week program specifically teaching people how to coach on money mindset. So of course, I'm going to walk everybody through the step-by-step process of how to manifest money in their business, break through their own money blocks, but then give them the tools and the resources to teach other people and how to do the same. Because once you have that, again, skill set of knowing how to do it for yourself and opening up all of the different doors that you can have revenue in your business, can help you really have a solid foundation for whatever it is that you want to do. So again, I love coaching, but it's also not going to be my full-time thing forever. I'm thinking about production. I'm thinking about movies. I'm thinking about books. But having this solid foundation of one, being able to help people on every step that I go through, having really reliable systems that are set up too. So the courses, the podcasts, it's like those are all just the logistic things once you have the clear vision of what you want. And that's kind of everything included all in one that I'm starting in January. Yeah, it's my most recent project I'm working on.
Amazing. Okay, we want to revisit the makeup questions. So this one is for the makeup artists. What was, back in the day, the number one kit product that you couldn't live without?
Probably Tarte Shape Tape.
Oh, yeah. Good one. Good one.
Mostly
Good
because
one.
I use that for my base, for my eyes. And I also stopped wearing foundation as much, and I would just use concealer instead and like spot, and then just do like a light coverage. So yeah, that would definitely be like my top.
Did it feel like weird saying a makeup product again on a podcast?
A little bit. It's a little nerve-wracking, especially because I've also never been really good with like products of like what to recommend, and like I would just find one that worked for me and then I would just like stick to it. But I also know that product's not for everybody because I think it's not as good for people with dry skin. I have really oily skin. So yeah, but it is fun to talk about makeup.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, okay. So what advice do you have for somebody who is struggling in their business currently? Maybe they have no bookings. Maybe they have no money coming in. Money is a little bit scarce. They are feeling really, really low right now. What advice would you give them for getting some momentum back in their business?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is to feel. Like if you're feeling low, then feel low. Like don't resist the feeling of being low. Because again, a lot of people, they're like, I'm feeling really low. And if you can't feel it to the extent where it's like, okay, I'm not scared to feel this anymore, then you're not done feeling. And it might just be you waking up, doing a little bit for your business and just like breathing, taking a nap, watching a sad movie. You know what I mean? That helps you really have a solid foundation for what it is that you want to start. Otherwise, you're just going to like get to the next step and like still feel like that and be like, why do I feel like this? It's because you never fully felt it in the first place. But then go 10 times bigger. Every single time that I was in this place, I was like, holy crap, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I got people relying on me. It was always never about like business, but it was always about like my desires. And it's like when we are in those places, like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. We put our desires on hold. And that's actually the opposite of what I would recommend. Every single time that I was not only able to like catapult myself out of it, it was because I really prioritized, what do you want, Anita? Whether it was a trip or my apartment, something material, it helped me really go after what it is that I want. And then everything just slowly started to align because I had something that I was looking forward to.
What you said about feel the feelings is really powerful. As a society, as a whole world, we really shun like the negative feelings. We shun sadness. We shun like being upset and anger. These are all negative emotions. And yeah, they are. Then they're not great, but it's important to feel them because that's when you feel joy and happiness and excitement and love. So whenever I feel like a bad day, I let it be a bad day. Like, let it be a bad day.
For real. And then it's like, as soon as you're like, I guess I'm going to have a bad day a little bit. And then it's like, I don't know what happens, but I always kind of like switch it because I'm like, oh, okay. It's like you give yourself permission and it kind of goes away.
Absolutely. You're so right. It's so funny, isn't it? Okay, last question. What are some of your favorite, because you're a podcaster, so I know you're probably a podcast addict as well. So what are some of your favorite podcasts for self-development and also for fun?
Okay, I'm glad that you asked this because I think a lot of people would be surprised by my answer. For self-development, definitely the Manifestation Babe. I love, love, love her. Another one I've been listening to every single week is Angels and Awakening podcast by Julie Jancis. She specifically shares stories about people talking with their loved ones on the other side, getting signs from them, dreams from them. It's so beautiful. But she's also very educational about like, you know, connecting with your spirit guides. And she helped me heal my relationship with God a lot because she gave me permission to like, not it just be with me in church, you know? So I really recommend that one. Another one I like to listen to, it doesn't have to do with manifest. Oh, a little bit. He does talk about manifestation, but it's actually a fitness and lifestyle podcast. I think that's what it's called. He's from Australia. I love that podcast because he's like very much like teaches you about self-discipline, about food. But for the fun ones, I actually really love true crime.
Oh, yeah.
So I listen to Murder with My Husband. That's like my top one. I listen every week, which sometimes I'll take a break because I just need to slow down. And then I also listen to Morbid, which is also kind of another true crime, but they do really old cases, 1930s, 80s, like 1800s. And then Two Girls, One Ghost. That one I don't listen to all the time because it's more paranormal. The girls are also, like, in all these podcasts, they're all so funny too. So it really just kind of helps me, like, laugh with them, learn from them.
I knew you'd have some good ones for us. Final question then. Where can everybody find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Manifesting Money Podcast. And I kind of live on Instagram, so I will message you back if you message me. And also on TikTok, it's also the same thing, Manifesting Money Podcast. And then my podcast is under the same thing too. I like to share some testimonies, and I usually take some voice memos that I get from Instagram and, share them on the podcast. So again, if you either have a question or if you have a testimony, just send it to me on Instagram and I'll get back to you.
You know what? There's one thing that I wish we had had time to touch on that we didn't touch on, but your zone of genius is manifesting money, which is literally like your handle. And I wish we had a chance to talk a little bit more about that, but I really wanted this episode to be more about vulnerability and emotion and spiritual journeys and like the chapters. I really wanted it to be kind of like an autobiographical, if that's a word, version of your journey, Anita, because I believe there's so much to be learned from that.
Everything that we talk about money is just a material thing that manifests when you allow yourself to process your emotions, go after your desires. So it's like, even if you're like, we didn't talk about money at all, we did. Like, everything that we're talking about, it's like, do these things and I promise the money will come.
Absolutely. I really want to thank you today. I would really recommend that everybody go and listen to your podcast and watch your TikToks if they are interested in manifesting more money, because they are so good, guys. Trust me, they're so good.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Biggest gratitude for you coming on today. I know you are very, very busy. I know that you're back home right now and you're spending time with your family. So I really do thank you so, so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody listening. And I hope you have a great day.
Yay! You have been listening to a podcast by Kayleigh. Thank you so much for tuning in today and being on this mission with me to self-improvement and taking steps towards financial empowerment. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to follow me on the gram at By Kayleigh Podcast, where I post pretty much daily. I would also love to hear your thoughts, feedback, and energy. So please do leave me a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you are listening today. In the meantime, I want you to go forward, believe in yourselves, and be the change you want to see. Bye, guys.